Hi, folks. Welcome to season 2, episode 7 of the Lemons and Pineapples podcast. Today, my guest is Elizabeth Kipp, and we're talking about using ancestral clearing to release the effects of intergenerational trauma. First, a bit about my guest. Elizabeth Kipp is a stress management and historical trauma specialist who uses trauma-trained and yoga-informed addiction recovery coaching, ancestral clearing, compassionate inquiry, and yoga to help people with their healing. Elizabeth healed from over 40 years of chronic pain, including anxiety, panic attacks, and addiction. Now in long-term recovery, she guides others to unleash their healing power, find freedom from suffering, and live a thriving life. She's the best-selling author of The Way Through Chronic Pain, Tools to Reclaim Your Healing Power, and I'm very excited to welcome her to the podcast. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi, Emma. Thank you so much for inviting me on as a guest. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. This is a bit of a new one for me. I've been doing a bit of work with a shaman over the past 18 months or so. So I have connected when I've been using plant medicine to some ancestral stuff, which has been very interesting. So I'm really intrigued to hear more about the work that you do. So to start us off, before we get into the juicy ancestral clearing bit, can you share a bit more about what intergenerational trauma is and how it ends up happening?
Sure, and you had to start with plants. So, because I have a degree in plant biology, so you know, we're all connected. This whole area that we're in, and what that you've kind of brought in with the shaman angle, comes from. It's all based in the understanding that we are all connected. For just for instance, I just breathe in some oxygen. I'm going to breathe out CO2, carbon dioxide. The plants will take that in, and they'll put out oxygen. So we're connected. And another thing that's kind of interesting is we have the same mechanism and pathway to metabolize sugar that trees do, that plants do. So it just gives you an understanding on a very fundamental level of how connected we really are. It doesn't surprise me in the least that you're getting a transmission from your ancestors through the plants. I just, to me, it's like, yeah. So this is not a new area to me. And when you think about our understanding of genetics, where information's passed down from one generation to the next, from an evolutionary biology point of view, that information, in a larger sense, is the best bet. The information that passes to you and me is the best bet of the kind of environment we're going to be entering into when we're born. The information coming in, that's the information that we need. Now, isn't that interesting? So we live in this self-correcting, evolutionary, creative world. And so that's very interesting. To just that whole concept there is interesting to me. And the way information gets passed down from one generation to the next is important. Now, what's interesting is there's some noise in the system. There's maybe more information there than we actually need. So it's a robust system. And some of the information that we get is not helpful, right? Worry energy. How many people in your family, maybe a mother, maybe an aunt, maybe a grandmother, maybe a grand aunt, have that worry energy? And they come by it honestly, because look at where we came from. Look at all the trial and tribulation we went through to get here. Mm-hmm. So worry energy is kind of baked into the cake. But when it's epic, when the imprint is so strong that it rules our life, and it's a behavior that's been that we can see in the family, then that really is an indication of intergenerational trauma.
Okay.
It's just one
Yes.
example.
Yeah, and it's very, very interesting, isn't it? Because if I think of my family lineage, on my dad's side, there's his father was Irish, hence the O'Brien surname, and he was one of a big family, and I think there were about 7 or 8 siblings, and at least 3 of them were all Catholic priests. So there's a huge amount of kind of religious programming that comes on that side. And I'm quite anti-religion, and I wonder if it isn't some of the stuff that's come down through my lineage that has kind of set that up for me. And then on my mother's side, there's generations of women who have been sidelined, who have settled. And that's been something I've worked through and worked myself out of that pattern, but that was a pattern that I also fell into. So it's very interesting to me to see in my own life how that intergenerational, well, the intergenerational stuff has played out. And then, of course, if we've got traumatic events in the family, then that's also going to be passed through as well.
Sure. A couple of things to say here. One is that yes to all of that. And there's a woman named Rachel Yehuda who has done a lot of work on this topic. And one of the things that she did was she looked at families that had been through the Holocaust survivors or their descendants, versus the population that hadn't had that experience. And she found differences. She found that there were stress responses that were kind of baked into the Holocaust survivor family that weren't in the regular population. So that, and I've actually worked with some of the descendants of Holocaust survivors, and also a few people that were actually in the Japanese internment camps. So during Second World War. So and you can kind of imagine the imprint that leaves. Now, let me bring it from another perspective. When your mother was pregnant with you, when your grandmother was pregnant with your mother, when you're at the 4-month mark, all the eggs that your mother was ever going to have developed. So you spent time in your mother and your grandmother for 5 months in their energy, as it were. That would be more from a quantum point of view that I'm talking about the energy, but I'm sure that Newtonian regular stuff, that kind of science could quantify that too. And that's interesting to me because your grandmother spent time in her grandmother.
Yeah.
Et cetera, down the line. And there's the thread that we can follow that way. Right. Yeah. So that's another thing. Now it gets complicated because, in my mind, this whole topic gets complicated because if you imagine the nested Russian dolls where there's a little doll and another doll and a bigger and a bigger and a big doll, right? Like that. Imagine you and I, you or the listener, right? As this individual in the middle inside doll. And then the next doll out is the family environment. And the next doll out is the culture that you're living in. And the next doll out is maybe the country that you're in. And the next doll out is the planet. And that's all in the present moment, right here and now. So we're experiencing the energies of the collective of all those things. And the last the outside doll would be the ancestral, right? And that the past, when it will imprint on the present unless we do something to shift that. And the past imprinting on the present. The past has this momentum and some weight to it. And so you're talking about women in the family feeling small, not being able to rise to their potential. That's a weight. And I don't know how you came about like discovering all that, but I can imagine that you felt that as an actual physical presence, because it's mind, body, spirit. You can't separate the three. It's all one, right? So you feel that as a physical presence. You feel that as a weight. You feel that as a psychological, probably a burden. We would call that a burden, and maybe an emotional contraction, perhaps, kind of like some suppression going on there. And and then the spiritual is, if I can't be who I came here to be, who am I?
Yeah.
Right. So look at all those. So there's a lot happening in this complex. And we look at the trends and what's happening from the past imprinting on the present moment. So, but we have imprints on the present moment from the past on all these different dolls, not just the ancestral piece. We've got the ancestral piece from the collective, from the in the culture, all that, like all those imprints, right? So it's a big area.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think there's a lot to process through with that. I think my realizations have come from my own journey of doing self-development work and my own introspection in noticing patterns that were playing out in my life and having a look at, there's a common denominator here and it's me. So what do I need to work on, and what might be causing that? And I think I've done energy healing work. I've done work with shamanic work. I've done plant medicine. And I have to say the plant medicine has been really transformative for my inner work. It's given me a lot of understanding about the world, myself, family dynamics. As like I say, connecting with, I've connected with my grandmothers via plant medicine. The grandfathers not so much. So it's an interesting journey. Can you share a little bit about what ancestral clearing is, what it looks like, how it works, for someone who's listening and going, this is fascinating that everything's passed down, but like we've discussed, a lot of the stuff that's passed down is unhelpful in this world that we live in at the moment. So just talk a little bit more about ancestral clearing.
Sure. Ancestral clearing is actually a trademarked and registered energy modality. Was developed, actually was pioneered by Howard Wills, and then further developed and is taught, trademarked and registered by John Newton of Health Beyond Belief. I'm one of his practitioners, and I was so impressed with the work that I got into it about 10 and a half years ago, that I was like, I took the first training I could out of the experience, out of the program that I was in. It's really a process where we're actually asking source, or some people call it God, or call it consciousness, or whatever you want to call the thing that created all of this. We're asking it to help us release that which no longer serves us. We're not asking it to take it away. We're asking it to help us release. So it's kind of an important distinction there. And we use the word forgive to mean offer up that which no longer serves. We do that with gratitude and humility, and we do it in the form of a prayer. And I have my own religious Well, I have a science background, so there's that. But there was so much confusion around religion when I was a
Mm.
child, and I was kind of like, it was kind of like this for me, just briefly. So we get the playing field sorted out, the landscape here that we're working on. I was actually raised with like this loving God, but wrathful God.
Mm.
I had like a Catholic nanny, and the wrathful and but loving, and it was very confusing. We had a chapel at school, and that was confusing. And my parents didn't take me to they didn't go to church, so that was even more confusing. I had one grandfather that was an atheist, and another one that was a Christian Scientist. So very, very strange. I'm just having difficulty getting grounding. And I kind of went to bed at night. I was trained to pray at night, and God, now I lay me down to sleep. I hope the Lord my soul to keep. If I should
Mm.
die before I wake, I pray to God my soul to take. And I was terrified because I couldn't figure out whether the God was going to be wrathful or loving.
Mm.
And so it was not really, I didn't really feel safe doing that because I didn't know who was going to show up. Anyway, I felt like the God was very schizophrenic and unreliable. But they're all powerful. So what do I
Yeah.
do with that? Right. So very confusing, right? In this practice, we just are asking source, whatever it is, to help us release that which no longer serves us. That's
Yes.
simple. We do it with humility and gratitude. And I'll give
Mm-hmm.
you an experience of it, just briefly.
Mm.
Everyone listening, if you could just notice kind of what you're feeling in the body sensation wise. Like I'm feeling my sitting bones on my chair, and I'm feeling my feet on the floor, and I've got a little bit of sensation in like one side of my neck and the other, and just kind of notice that. And just let these words pass over you. Breathing normally, right? Higher power, creator, Holy Father, Great Spirit, Divine Mother, Infinite One, oneness. You are known by many names, yet you are one. We ask humbly and gratefully for us and all our ancestors and all their relations through all space, time, dimension, realms, lifetimes, and incarnations. For all sickness and the ensuing grief and suffering, and for all the times we stood powerless and unable to help ease the pain for our loved ones. For survivor guilt in plagues and pandemics that swept through our lives and our communities. Please help us all to forgive one another and forgive ourselves, please, and thank you. For all misunderstandings, disputes, arguments, fights that broke out, and resulting injuries, whether intentional or unintentional. For all the guilt anyone carried because of it, for every raid, assault, incursion, battle, war, and Holocaust, and for all the angst, the betrayals, the fierce anger, and any guilt we felt because of these actions, or guilt that others felt because of our actions. For all unresolved resentment, enduring aversions, loathing, and outright hate that erupted and continued unrelentingly intergenerationally. Please help us all forgive one another and forgive ourselves. For once and for all of it, no matter what happened, please and thank you. For all pacts, hid secrets, for all the times we were sworn to silence under duress, for any abuse, slavery, torture, or any other injustice, and all that arose in the lineage because of these events, including physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual illness. Please help us all forgive one another and forgive ourselves, please, and thank you. Please help us each release each other and release ourselves, find peace with one another, and find peace with ourselves for once and for all, now and forever. Please and thank you. Please and thank you. Please and thank you. And just take a nice breath in and let it out, and just notice how that feels in the body now.
It's interesting. I feel a bit lighter across my shoulders.
There you go. Yeah,
Mm,
that's pretty much like 99% of the people say I feel lighter, and that was my experience as well.
mm,
That's one example that one way that we get at the burden that we carry. There's about 30 different ways that John teaches aspects, ways that we can get at it. And that's just the easiest one to share in this
yeah.
particular milieu. Um, and also, I noticed that things will kind of continue to unravel for the next few days.
Hmm.
It's very interesting. And the other thing that's kind of fun is that I didn't know what I was carrying until I didn't carry it
Yeah.
because I came in with it. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I always think it's fascinating this kind of work, um, is that you often don't notice, like you said, something's shifted until you're in a situation where ordinarily you would react one way, and suddenly you find yourself having, oh, that I wasn't triggered, or I didn't do my usual thing. Huh, something's shifted. We often don't know, like you said, what we're carrying until we're not carrying it anymore. And what I really like about what you've shared here is that it's not about passing responsibility to a higher power to make things better. It's working with, I mean, I'm very spiritual, so working with the universe or source to help shift things. And some of the shamanic work I've been doing is, I've started to ask ancestors to help me, shift stuff that's really sticky. And then I've realized a few days later, I actually feel better. Um, but it's not necessarily an immediate transformation. It's like you've said, as time goes on, you tend to notice there's been a shift. It's subtle. I think spiritual work is subtle because it works on so many levels. So thank you for sharing that. That was really cool.
It can be. I will tell you, it can be subtle. It can be kind of immediate and obvious as well. I was in a pain management program when I was first exposed to this uh, modality, and I wasn't expecting it. And I had my science hat on, so I
Mm.
was, like, and I was in a strange room with strange people, and and I was, um, you know, I was kind of in that space, and there were I was a chronic pain patient at that time, and there were 20 other people like me in the room. That was astonishing for me just to be in a room with that many people like me.
Mm.
And I got halfway, and he had us read silently one of the prayers, and we didn't even read it out loud. We just read. So I got halfway through the prayer, and I felt the room shift. And I kind of denied that. I was kind of like, well, I noticed that, but that couldn't have happened. That's just my imagination, right? And then I get 3/4 of the way through, and I feel my pain start to
Uh,
dissipate. By the time
yeah.
the prayer was done, my pain went from a 9 to a 2,
Wow.
and I was like, well, that's real. And everyone else in the room was reporting that, and I was
Mm.
astonished. I was like, okay, what just happened here? Like,
Yeah.
something obviously happened. Is it repeatable? Right? Is it measurable? Science hat, right?
Mhm.
And does he teach it? And the answer to all that was yes, although there haven't been any formal studies on the measuring, but that's a matter of time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work that's being done in the ancestral space from kind of different perspectives, and somebody somewhere is going to start, measuring this stuff, because we're
Yeah.
all feeling the effect of it. It's real. It's not like
Yeah.
some woo-woo imaginary thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Elizabeth, this has been wonderful and fascinating to hear about this. For anybody who wants to connect with you, to find out more about this work, to have an ancestral clearing session, I know you do these online, so we've just done it online. How can people get hold of you to connect with you and work with you?
Oh, thanks, Emma. Everyone can find me through my website, which is Elizabeth with a hyphen Kipp, KIPP.com. All my social media is there. You can contact me right through there. There's lots of free resources and a whole bunch of different prayers. So lots of resources. Elizabeth with a hyphen Kipp.com.
Brilliant. I'm going to pop that in the show notes. And is your book available on Amazon?
Oh yeah. It's
Fine.
available
I'll
on
put...
Amazon. You can get an autograph copy from me, but
Ooh.
I'm in the US, so anybody outside of the US is going to cost, might as well just get it on Amazon. But you can get
Okay.
it in Kindle and audio and paperback. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. I'm going to pop the link to that as well in the show notes. Thank you again. I'm going to be monitoring over the next few days what shifts for me. And I invite anybody listening who's listened to the prayer Elizabeth shared as well, and the words you've shared, to just see if you notice anything shifting after that. And then I would love for folks to, you can pop me a DM on Instagram at Emma O'Brien Coach and let me know. You can also let Elizabeth know, so I'm sure she'd love to hear from you as well. Thank you again, Elizabeth, for joining me.
Oh, thanks so much, Emma. So great to be here.
Thank you for being with us today, folks. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I will see you same time next week. Bye for now.